Today on the best of Oklahoma gardening, former host Ray Campbell has tips to get those early tomatoes. Horticulturalist David Hillock and Mike Miller from Pond Pro Shop have spring chores for water gardens. Ray Campbell has some gardener's helpers, and Barbara Brown prepares a beet salad for one. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, Tulsa's source for great gardens, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
You know, just recently I was out at a local garden center and nursery here in Stillwater and was talking to a friend of mine that owns that garden center, and it was, it was in mid to late March, I guess, and it was a really bright, warm, sunny day, and he told me that he had all kinds of people in there that day wanting tomato plants. Well, obviously that's way too early to plant tomatoes because of the dangers of frost and also the soil temperatures, but we do really get kind of antsy, so to speak, when the weather gets warm and we start seeing spring really come to life. But one of the things we can do now is to go ahead and prepare our tomato planting site, which will really help us out when we plant the tomatoes later on, when the temperatures of the soil and when the danger of frost is all past. And so what I like to do is at least 2 or maybe even better, 3 weeks before planting, I like to go in and prepare my planting site. And the way I do that is dig a hole where I'm going to plant my tomato at least 8 inches deep, maybe even 8 to 12 inches deep, and about a foot wide. Then I want to come back in and I want to refill that hole with 2 parts of compost, and this is compost that's not been screened, it's just rough compost, but it's really good compost. You don't have to use compost, but some type of good organic matter, maybe manure or some sort of organic matter would suffice. But I do 2 parts of that to 1 part of soil. Then in order to give the tomatoes a little bit of a start, I like to put in about 1/3 cup of lime. Now the reason I like to put the lime is because I want some added calcium in there to help prevent blossom end rot. And this particular lime is called rapid lime. It has soluble calcium in it. So I know it's going to go ahead and get into the soil solution when I start the process of mixing it in and getting it into the soil. So I put about 1/3 cup of lime, 2 tablespoons of a good complete fertilizer such as 10-20-10 or 12-12-12, and then just mix that in really good. And then we'll have about 2 or 3 weeks here for all that compost to start continuing to further decompose, for the soil to begin to take up some of the lime and the fertilizer that we've put in there. And then I will have my hole all ready to plant my tomato when time comes and I won't have to do any type of preparation. In order to remember where this is, because I know it's going to rain and things are going to sort of settle down, I just stick a flag in there or a stick of some kind and mark exactly where my hole is. Then when it comes time to plant, I know where my planting site is. I can put my tomato in there, get it off to a good start. Then after I plant my tomato, what I like to do is get just a garbage bag, such as this, black garbage bag. I'll put it over that tomato hole. I do this about 10 days before I plant. Stick it down good with either rocks or boards or these landscape fabric pins. And the reason I'm doing that is because that's going to help warm that soil up. The sun will get onto the soil, will warm it up good, and then I can just simply jerk that off or even plant my tomato right through a hole that I put in this plastic. And then I've got my tomatoes off to a good start. So when you get really sort of in a hurry to plant your tomatoes this time of the year, instead of planting them, go out and fix your tomato planting site. Then you'll feel like you've done something to help those tomatoes out.
It's a beautiful spring day, and many people are getting out into the gardens and the landscapes and trying to get ready for the coming growing season. And one of the tasks that some people have is managing their water gardens. And today we're going to talk about what's necessary to prepare your water gardens for the season. And today we're here with Mike Miller from Pond Pro Shop in Shawnee, and welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, David.
You're the expert on this stuff.
Well, I don't know about that, but we'll do our best.
All right. Well, our water garden was actually renovated a year ago, so it's pretty new and it's really not in horrible shape, but there are still things that we need to do each year to prepare the water garden so that it functions properly and is nice and healthy for the plants and the fish.
Absolutely. It's been quiet for the winter, so now it's time to start thinking about what we're going to do to it. There are things that have gone on all winter long. We've grown some algae in the pond, and that needs to be taken care of. People have walked around here doing different things, removing plants, so we've moved some rocks. Those need to be put back in place. We're going to inspect the edges to make sure that none of the rubber liner is exposed.
Okay.
So we're going to put rocks back, we're going to pick up sticks. We're going to do a general maintenance cleanup around the outside of the pond. That's the first step.
Okay.
And that way we hope to identify if there are any leaks. We'll find a low spot or we'll find a wet spot, and that will allow us to begin to fix those things early in the season rather than waiting until later.
Excellent.
The next thing we probably would do is take apart the equipment and begin to clean the filtration out. That's what has spent the wintertime accumulating all of the mess that's in the pond.
Okay.
A normal part of the decomposition of organic matter, fish waste, fish food that we've put in there. That's all been collected in there, and we want to try and get that out now. So
that's a very
start
important,
the spring.
Yeah, that's a very important part of the system, make it run functionally, and so we want to make sure it's nice and clean.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
All water gardens and ponds require two kinds of filtration, mechanical and biological. We're going to concentrate pretty much today on biological filtration. We're going to be taking care of those parts of the system that assist us with growing bacteria colony that help reduce all of that organic matter in the pond.
Excellent.
That's what we're looking for.
Very good. So we'll go ahead and you can walk us through the steps as we go, and we'll get the pond all nice and clean for the season.
Okay. The first thing we're going to do is start over here with the skimmer. And that skimmer has a pad in it. That pad is to collect stuff as mechanical filtration. So we're going to take that pad out and clean it and get the skimmer all ready to go again for the season. It's been running, but we want to clean it up and just give it some general health check, make sure there's no leaks around it, make sure there's nothing plugging it up. So we're going to start with the skimmer.
Okay.
That's the easiest part. Then we're going to go to the waterfall filter. The waterfall filter consists of some biological media that grows a bacteria colony and some mechanical media that would stop trash from getting to that bacteria colony.
Okay.
We're going to take that apart and clean it out. We're not going to use chlorinated water unless we absolutely have to. We would rather use the pond water so that we don't kill off the bacteria colony. Small as it is this time of year, we want to save as much bacteria as we can. So we'll clean it out with pond water and make sure that it's all ready to go again, put it back together. On this particular water garden, we have a pressurized filter that operates very similarly to a swimming pool filter that you might be familiar with.
Okay.
Where we're going to turn a dial on it, and when we turn that dial and turn the pump on, it's going to backwash that filter and blow all of the trash out that's been accumulated over the winter. So we'll blow that out into the garden where it can do us some good because it's really fertile water.
Oh, okay.
So once we get that out, cleaned up, we'll set it back and we'll be ready to go then with the actual pond itself. Then we're going to do a drain. We'll take out part of the water. We're going to try and reserve on yours as much water as we can. We think that's an eco-friendly thing to do, where we're going to take out some of that water. It's really still good. There's no problem with it. We're going to put it back in at the end of the process, but we brought some big tanks with us that we can catch that water in. We'll capture as much as we can and then transfer the fish to their own water. And we've got an aerator in there, so they're taken care of oxygen-wise at the same time. Once that's done, then we'll begin to vacuum out the pond. And the vacuum that we'll use is a pond vacuum, not a normal shop vac. If you have a very, very small pond, you might use a shop vac, but that's really a hassle. You're talking about sucking up 10, 15, or 20 gallons of water, then taking the lid off, carrying that somewhere. And remember, water weighs 8 pounds a gallon, so you don't want to carry it too far and dump it. And that's good water for your garden. It'll grow plants very well, but it's not real good for your pond. So we want to be able to use a vacuum that allows us to both create suction and take from the pond, and has a discharge on it that would run it out into the garden. This has 2 cylinders. When one fills up, it starts to discharge and the other one fills up. So it's a constant motion, suction, discharge, suction, discharge. So that's called a pond vac. And there are several of them on the market. This one happens to be an Awasa PondVac 4 with an 1800 watt motor on it. It'll do all that we need it to do. Comes with several different nozzles. The question I get asked a lot is, won't it suck up my fish? If you leave your fish in there, then it might actually do that if you have the wrong nozzle on it. But normally, no, it won't. And it also won't pick up the rocks. We have a nozzle that's specifically made to go into the rocks and suck up just the trash that's in there and not the rocks, even down to small pebbles. So we'll use different nozzles. We'll clean that out. We'll dump that water. There's only a little bit left in the pond. We're going to dump that out into your garden where it could actually fertilize the plants. At that point, we've got it pretty well cleaned. We've inspected everything. We're ready to put the water back in that we saved, fill up with what we have to use out of the faucet, and then we'll dechlorinate if we use chlorinated water. Now, if you're on well water here, we won't have to dechlorinate, but most people would have to. So we'll use a dechlorinator to take all that chlorine and chloramine out. I know Stillwater uses chloramines in their water system as well, and we'll clean that out. Then we'll restart the pond with the fish in place, and we'll start to add back bacteria so we can build that bacteria colony up to a point where it can now begin to function properly. It's been dead pretty much for the winter time because it doesn't like cold weather. But now that it's starting to warm up, the fish are active, they're releasing waste. That ammonia is going to become toxic if the bacteria is not there to convert it. We're going to let that happen, and we're going to help it by adding bacteria to it. We have a couple of different products we're going to use to remove some of the algae. We're not going to remove all of it, you never can, but we want to take care of the biggest part of it so that you can still enjoy your water garden for the beginning of the season.
So Mike, now that we've completed the initial spring cleanup, what's our next step?
Well, this is phase 1. Phase 2 would be adding in the plants and then sitting back and enjoying your pond. By the time you get your plants in place, you're going to start growing some algae too. So you're going to want to treat on a regular basis with algae and bacteria to keep that algae at bay. And then you're just going to enjoy your pond for the rest of the season.
Excellent. Well, as we could see today, we could do it ourselves if we wanted to, but you can also hire a contractor, a landscape group that knows how to maintain these for you, right?
Like we had Shades of Green Landscaping today out of Hare come in and do this job. There are contractors in the state who do this on a regular basis. You can contact me at Pond Pro, or any of the dealers in the state should be able to direct you to someone that knows what they're doing.
Excellent.
You need to be very careful though about who you have do your pond work, simply because you want somebody that knows what they're doing and uses the proper chemicals.
Right, the proper chemicals, and these pumps and these filters, they're kind of expensive too, aren't they? That's quite of an investment, so we want to make sure they don't get damaged.
Yeah, I like to tell people it's not rocket science. You can do it yourself, but there is a step-by-step procedure that you should follow in order to make sure that it's done right. Your fish and your pond and your plants are all healthy.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'd like to thank Shades of Green. We'd like to thank you for coming and visiting with us, and we look forward to a wonderful season.
All right, thanks for having us again.
You're welcome.
You know, a friend asked me recently, they said, Ray, what is your favorite garden tool, or which garden tool would you not give up if you had to give most of your tools up? And you know, that's kind of difficult for me to say because there are so many garden tools and garden aids that I really like. So, but I would like to tell you about 2 or 3 of mine today that I think are a must-have, at least for me in my garden. One of those is this little bench here. I think we talked about it earlier on the show, but this is my little garden bench that I was able to actually be given as a gift from my wife a few years ago when I had a problem with my leg. And it's a little stool I can either sit on or I can turn it over and kneel on it, and it has the handles that can help me get up. And so I really like that. And whether you have back problems or whether you have problems with your legs or whatever, and all gardeners at some point in time are going to have a little bit of problems, particularly if we're weekend gardeners and we're not doing it every day. You're going to get muscle sores and fatigue, and so this is really good to have. So I use this a lot. When I get down on it, I can easily get down, and my knees are cushioned, and when I want to get up, I can get up very easily. Actually, I call this my prayer bench because I'm on my knees so much. But the other tool that I really like, and I just don't think I could hardly live without now, is this little garden weeder thing called a Cobra. It really not been on the market very many years, but it has become a very, very popular tool for gardeners. And the reason that I really like it is because it is so versatile. If I want to make a shallow row in a raised bed or something to plant some seeds with, fairly shallow, I can just use this and make a little row like this to plant my seeds with. We can use it to weed with, and that's what it's really meant for. And the reason I like it is because with the Cobra, you can use it on the side or the end, but you can use it on the side and kind of scrape along and get up very, very close to your plants without damaging your plants. So it's an excellent tool. I would suggest that you might want to check these out and see if you can find a Cobra perhaps at your local garden center, because I guarantee you once you use it, you will use it over and over and over again. So I really like those 2 tools, both my little bench as well as my Cobra weeder. But another tool, or maybe I should say a garden aid, that I definitely would not give up in the garden, and I don't think any gardener should, is maybe not a tool, but it's really a mulch. If you have a garden out in your landscape, whether it's an ornamental garden, a shrub bed, or a vegetable garden, you really need to be using mulches in your garden. And I really like the organic mulches. And you have to be kind of selective, I think, in the kind of mulches that you use, depending on what your purpose is. Here we have our tomato plants. And I want to just mention on the tomato plants that one of our biggest problems with tomatoes are leaf spot diseases. We probably get more damage on the tomato plant from the leaf spot diseases than anything else. And those are a fungal disease for the most part that are in the soil, and when it rains or you water, the soil splashes up on the lower leaves of the plants and starts those fungal organisms to develop. We've already got those started on this tomato plant. As you can see, the rains we had recently and the warm weather have started splashing the soil up. We've got a little bit of fungal organisms that are beginning there, and those are just going to spread on up the plant. So I'm going to come in and clip those bottom leaves off that have some of that fungal disease on them already, take them out of the garden, and then I want to go ahead right now and mulch around that tomato plant to keep it from splashing up the next time it rains or the next time it's watered. It's a good idea to mulch your tomato plants and all your vegetable plants anyway, but particularly early in the season, just to protect them from some of those early diseases that might occur. So that's a really, I think, a good tip right now to go ahead and at least mulch around those. I'm using cottonseed hulls. There's a variety of mulches that can be used, but I really like the cottonseed hull because it's readily available at garden centers and farm supply stores. It's clean. It has no weeds in it. It's a great organic addition to the soil once the season is over, and it is readily available, as I said. An excellent mulch that I would encourage you to use in your garden. Another mulch I like to use in the garden is also very acceptable to me, for me, very accessible as well, And that's just simply leaves and grass clippings that I have saved from the winter time. I always keep a pile of leaves and grass clippings, and by the time they have composted themselves a little bit through the winter time, I can come in and use those, mulch my vegetable gardens with it, or even the ornamental plants I have in my landscape. Again, the benefits of the mulch is to stabilize soil temperature, hold moisture in the soil, keep the plants clean from being infected from soil-borne diseases, and also, because it's organic matter, it can be tilled into the soil at the end of the growing season. So this is another good tip I would like to pass along to you. If you've got access to leaves and grass, keep those in the summer, in the fall when you're raking those up, put them in a pile and just simply use those for a good mulch in your garden later on. Another good way I like to use this particular leaf and grass clipping compound is over in my asparagus bed on the other side of the garden. The reason I like to use that is because, again, it holds the weeds down, and asparagus is extremely difficult to control weeds in. If you get crabgrass or some of these other weeds starting up in your asparagus, it's very difficult to control. And also it keeps the asparagus spears nice and clean as they come up through the mulch, as you can see. Then the third mulch, good organic mulch that I'd like to perhaps mention to you, that I think you can really use in the garden, is pine straw. I live in a neighborhood where I'm fortunate enough that there are many pine trees in the neighborhood, but I'm probably even more fortunate enough that my neighbors rake those pine leaves up, put them in trash bags, set them out by the curb to be picked up, and I can go by just before the trash man comes and pick those up and use those pine needles at my house. They're a really, really good mulch in my ornamental and shrub beds. I use them a lot around perennials. I use them a lot around my shrubs. And in the garden, because they have more stability to them and they don't break down as fast, I like to use them in the strawberry bed. That pine straw will hold up throughout the season and even into the fall and some next year. It keeps the strawberries nice and clean. It holds the moisture in. It suppresses weeds. And I found that of all the tools that we use in the garden, and every day maybe there's some tool that's more important than the other, I would say that organic mulches in your garden, whether it's your ornamental garden or your vegetable garden, is probably the gardener's best friend.
Remember last summer when you were doing all that work getting things stored and put away for the winter months? Well, this is winter, and this is when you're supposed to use them, although you can use them other times too. So today I'm doing canned beet and blue cheese salad for one. A lot of families are not as large as they used to be. If you still have a family of 2 or 3, you can increase this recipe easily. But a lot of times it's hard to find something that's just good for one person. So let's look at what we've got. I've got a ½ cup of canned sliced beets. Now you could use whole beets. If you're using whole beets, I'd cut them into maybe quarters. You don't have to slice them. You could also use diced beets if you did them that way. I've drained them well, and now I'm going to make a dressing to go over it. And to that, for that, I'm going to use a teaspoon of fresh lemon juice, 1/8 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper, and 3 to 4 teaspoons of olive oil. Now use a really nice flavored olive oil here because this is one that you're going to be able to taste fairly well. Just going to whisk that together. It's not a lot, so it doesn't take very long to get it to where we want to go. And now I'm going to take about 1/4 of this and just drizzle it over the beets. Now I put the beets on a plate. If you're going to make this your dinner plate, you might want to use a larger one. This works for the side salad plate. What I want to have happen now is I want time for these flavors to blend. So I put about, as I said, about a tablespoon of this dressing onto the beets themselves. We'll give them about 15 minutes and those flavors will be absorbed by the beets. Now the next thing that we're going to do, we'll assume 15 minutes have gone by, is I have a cup of fresh greens. So you could use any kind of greens that you have in your kitchen. It could be mixed greens or fresh greens out of the garden if it's that far along in the season. While the beets are marinating, you don't want the greens on the plate because if they come in contact with the dressing, they're going to wilt. So just leave them over to the side. And then you're going to take the rest of your dressing and dribble that over the greens that you've got there. And the last thing we're going to do for this is some blue cheese. Now you could use feta if you prefer feta, if you haven't gotten a taste for the blue, and just crumble that over. You want it to be over the beets, but you also, to make this look like it's all part of the same dish, you can crumble a little bit of it over the greens as well. That's all there is to this. It's very simple. While the beets are actually marinating there on the plate, you could go ahead and get the rest of your meal ready, and you're ready for dinner. It's great for one person or two if it needs to be. I hope you'll try this one. It's canned beets with blue cheese salad for one.
Hi everyone, I'm Casey Hentges and I'm your new host for Oklahoma Gardening. I hope you're as excited about spring approaching as I am, and join us February 13th as we begin our new season for Oklahoma Gardening. In the meantime, we're going to show one more Best Of show, which will feature different garden design projects that you can do in your garden. So join us February 13th as we start our new season of Oklahoma Gardening.
To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.